Why kind people get hurt the most is a question that has lived quietly in the hearts of many who give more than they receive, who care more than they are cared for, who stay loyal even when loyalty is not returned, and who continue to show love in a world that often responds with indifference or cruelty. And the answer to this question lies deep inside human psychology, emotional patterns, and the silent decisions that kind people make every day without even realizing the cost to themselves. Because kindness is not just a personality trait, it is a way of feeling, a way of thinking, a way of connecting with the world. And when you are kind, you do not simply see people for who they are, you see them for who they could be, who they might become, who they are beneath their flaws, their mistakes, their anger, and their brokenness. And this ability to see the good in others is beautiful, but it is also dangerous because it makes you ignore the warning signs, the red flags, the disrespect, and the emotional boundaries that should protect your heart. And psychology explains that kind people often develop a pattern called emotional overgiving, where they prioritize the happiness of others above their own, not because they are weak, but because making others happy brings them a sense of purpose, worth, and fulfillment. And this deeply rooted habit often forms in childhood, where they may have learned that love is earned by being helpful, by being quiet, by being patient, by understanding others even when no one tried to understand them. And so they grew into individuals who give without being asked, who forgive without apology, who stay even when walking away would be healthier. And this is where the pain begins because the world is not made entirely of kind people, and those who are manipulative, selfish, emotionally unavailable, or broken in a different way easily recognize the light in kind individuals and either depend on it too much or take advantage of it, draining their energy, time, love, and emotional strength without ever pouring back into them. And the kind person does not immediately see this as harm. They tell themselves that the other person is just hurting, just confused, just broken, and that their love and patience will fix it, heal it, or change it. But psychology tells us that love alone cannot change someone who does not want to change. And kindness cannot save a person who is choosing not to be better, yet the kind person keeps trying because hope is stitched into their heart. And they believe in second chances, third chances, and infinite chances, even when their own heart is cracking quietly in the background. And this is why kind people tolerate behavior that others would never accept. They stay in toxic friendships, painful relationships, unbalanced family ties, and emotionally draining workplaces longer than they should, not because they do not see the truth, but because their empathy keeps rewriting the story in a more forgiving version because their mind says leave, but their heart says understand because they do not want to be the cause of anyone else's pain, even if it means carrying pain themselves. And the cruel irony is that the more you forgive, the more people think they can continue their behavior without consequences. And the more you understand, the less people feel the need to explain themselves to you. So your kindness slowly becomes permission for others to hurt you again and again until one day you realize that you have been fighting for people who would not even fight for you. And that realization is one of the deepest pains a kind person experiences because it shatters not just a relationship, but a belief in the goodness of people, and it makes them question their own worth. And this is where emotional exhaustion begins because kindness is a resource. And when it is given without rest, without reciprocity, and without protection, it turns into silent suffering. And still, even in pain, kind people rarely seek revenge or wish harm. They withdraw quietly, they reflect deeply, they blame themselves first. They ask where they went wrong instead of questioning the actions of those who wronged them. And this self blame is another psychological reason why kind people hurt the most, because they internalize pain while others externalize it. They assume responsibility for things that were never theirs to carry, and they hold on to guilt even when they were the ones who were mistreated. And this happens because kind people have a high emotional intelligence. They can see multiple perspectives, they can understand pain, trauma, and fear in others. But that same ability becomes a trap when they use it to excuse inexcusable behavior, when they choose to explain away cruelty instead of protecting themselves from it. And the deeper their empathy, the deeper their heartbreak. And many kind souls become trapped in one sided relationships where they give loyalty to someone who only gives convenience, love to someone who only gives attention, and understanding to someone who gives confusion, yet they stay because they remember the good version of that person, the version that existed in rare moments, the version that made them feel special, and that small amount of good becomes more powerful in their memory than the overwhelming amount of pain. And psychology calls this a form of emotional attachment that is strengthened by inconsistency, because the human brain bonds more deeply when rewards are unpredictable and when kindness is given freely but returned only occasionally. The kind person begins to crave those rare good moments like proof that their love is working, like evidence that their pain has meaning. And this slowly ties them to someone who is wrong for them, creating a cycle of hope and disappointment, love and hurt, trust and betrayal, until their heart becomes tired but still refuses to harden. Because kind people do not want to become cold. They do not want the world to change who they are. They do not want to lose their softness, even when it is the very thing that makes them vulnerable. And there is a quote that says, "The people who love the hardest often get hurt the deepest." And this is because the depth of your heart determines the depth of your pain, not the actions of others. And when you love with your entire soul, when you attach meaning, dreams, memories, and hopes to a person, you are not just losing them when they hurt you, you are losing a future you imagined, a version of yourself that only existed in that connection. And that loss feels like grief, like the death of something that never had a proper goodbye. And because kind people feel deeply, they grieve deeply, they remember deeply, they hurt deeply, and they hide it all behind smiles, silence, and understanding because they do not want to burden others with their pain. And this is perhaps the most heartbreaking part of all, that the people who would hold your pain the most gently are the ones who suffer in silence. And still, even after being betrayed, used, ignored, or hurt, kind people often make the decision to love again, to trust again, to believe again, because their heart is not built for hatred and their soul is not wired for cruelty. They carry pain, but they refuse to pass it on, and in a strange, beautiful, and painful way, their suffering does not make them bitter, it makes them wiser, more aware, more careful with who they let into their world, but never less loving. And that is why kind people get hurt the most, because they do not play games, they do not pretend, they do not love halfway. They bring their real heart, their real intentions, and their real emotions into every connection. And when that reality meets a world that is not always honest, their tenderness becomes their wound, but it is also their greatest strength, because despite everything, their heart stays soft in a hard world. And that softness, even when it is scarred, is the most powerful form of strength there is. And maybe one day the world will learn to be gentler with the kind souls it keeps breaking. Or maybe kind people will finally learn that their heart, their love, and their energy must be protected, cherished, and valued, not given to anyone who asks, but only to those who deserve it. Because kindness is not meant to be a sacrifice, it is meant to be shared with those who honor it, respect it, and return it with the same sincerity. And until that lesson is learned, kind people will continue to hurt the most, but they will also continue to be the most beautiful souls in a world that desperately needs their light.